My guest is a banker by training with over 2 decades of experience. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Ibadan in agricultural economics and a master's in banking and finance from the University of Lagos. He has attended appropriate business courses in some of the best business schools in the world. Before his present appointment, my guest was Executive Director with First Bank. Please welcome Mr. Remi Babalola, the Minister of State for Finance. Mr. Babalola, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Let's first of all take a look at the budget. We know that different budgets that we have passed in the past have been accomplished to certain percentages. Before we take a detailed look at what you have presented as the 2010 budget, may we just quickly review the budget that we are on course with till December, that is the 2009 budget. To what extent was it met?
Most important aspect for budgetary execution is the underlying philosophy behind it. The challenges that people have been having since 2007 has been in terms of releases, whether money actually will be released for specific projects. But what you find out for 2009 completely different is the fact that there were substantial releases from March up to October. Substantial releases. For all the MDAs, monies were released for all of them. At the early part of the year, the utilization, which is also a little bit different from budget performance and actualization and implementation that people talk about, because what people are measuring is in terms of the money that we've released, whether that money is used, and that is actually utilization. Mm-hmm. We now need to go further than that to actually see what that money has been utilized on, and which is what we call in terms of deliverables. If I'm saying that I'm doing a road, a 60-kilometer road from one end to another, that is the deliverable. That is what should be measured, not in terms of just the money that is being released for that particular project. But what we, up to now, what people...
But if the money is not released, the project will never...
Yes. So that's the first thing, is for money to be released and then for it to be utilized. And then we have the deliverables. For 2009, in terms of utilization, so for most of the MDAs, we've had... currently, because at the end of October, we actually did, on a quarterly basis, which we published, we always let people know how much money was released and how much of it has been utilized. And what happened mid-year, after June, was the fact that there was a lot of money in our bank, which is with Central Bank. And the MDAs, for one reason or the other, they were not actually utilizing it as fast as possible. But
what do you mean for one reason or the other? What were the reasons why the monies allocated and made available weren't utilized?
There are a few variables. Number one, if the budget is not passed on time, if it didn't start at the early stage, for those projects that are not ongoing projects that are starting, that are initiating in that particular fiscal year, what that means is that they must have some engineering drawings and technical work and things like that. That will take some time. Of course, some of the ministries will also complain in terms of the Bureau for Public Procurement, but the most important aspect is not the issue about procurement law. It's about planning. If you have effective planning, you should be able to actually scale through the procurement process. Another aspect why money may actually be in the covers and some of the MDAs may not be able to use it is in terms of the challenges that we have with the season. For instance, Works Ministry, which is, even in 2010, it has the largest chunk of money. But if for instance, a large chunk of this money is during the rainy season, then we have some challenges in terms of how that money will be utilized, especially in some areas of the country. So you have a situation where they can do substantial work towards the end of the fiscal year. And that's the time that, in fact, that's the major reason that we presented to the National Assembly that made them to say that they will allow us to take the 2009 budget up to end of March rather than at the end of December. Because
end of March 2010.
Okay. Just because of the seasonality, the weather. Because if you actually have so much money in the area for agriculture as well as for works, and because during the time that you have the money, that is rainy season, they need to wait for works, for instance. So there are some issues there that we try to work on in that respect. There's also an issue about capacity. There are some of the MDAs that may not have the capacity to actually see some of the projects through within so short a time. We are actually addressing some of those issues.
Yes, but to what degree generally would you say? What percentage of the budget
relatively
would you say has been implemented?
As we speak, that have been utilized, the money that have left the system and on specific project is relatively, on the average, about 50%. However, don't forget, that's why I said that we're also scaling it through to March next year. There is, in the last 2-3 months, there have been accelerated utilization of funds because the presidency actually waited in at the end of the month, the last week at the end of the month, Federal Executive Council. What Federal Executive Council goes through is to check what every MDA does with its money. And then you tell us your problems, your challenges, and your issues, and we see how we can actually address that. So what we find out is that in the last 3 months, there have been accelerated utilization of funds. And that's why, if you look at our report at the end of first quarter, at the end of second quarter, they were really very poor in terms of utilization of funds. But increasingly, it's improving. And by the time we get to the one for the end of December, it will have moved up significantly. Interestingly, there are some MDAs that have utilized their capital expenditure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you right here. Yeah. You've made repeated reference to MDAs. For those of us, for the layman who's just watching you, what
ministries, departments, and agencies? Okay. Because when all the projects that we are doing, we are actually getting them through the ministries, various ministries, departments, and agencies. NTA, for instance, if we are allocating money to NTA now, it's part of, the particular agencies that we need to make sure that, okay, how is that money used for the project that have been allocated for? So that's the way it works. At the end of December, we believe that it will be higher, it will scale up. And by the time you extend it to March, substantially there shouldn't be too much worry. We want, what Nigerians want to see are the projects, the deliverables, and that's what is important. That's what we are trying to measure. So we are very hopeful that if we continue what we've done the last 2-3 months in terms of holding every officer of the MDAs responsible and accountable, we are going to get better results in terms of implementation, utilization, and execution of the projects. Okay,
so you've prepared the 2010 budget, precipitated on a benchmark of the sale of oil for $57 a barrel. We've all been witnesses to in the past the vagaries in the international oil market. Do you think this is a realistic figure in making the budget projection for 2010?
Very, very realistic. Very, very realistic. The challenges for predicting the benchmark price this year is a little bit different from that of last year. Last year was very challenging for us because last year was when it was actually going down at a very precipitous rate. It was very unusual rate. And what most Nigerians need to know about the benchmark price that we used last year, which was $45, it was the second most prudent benchmark in all the OPEC countries. In terms of when we look at what we, because we did a lot of work, we did not want a situation. Don't forget also, that benchmark is not the price that we're estimating the market price is going to be. It's supposed to be a bit lower, at least 15% lower than the benchmark, than the market price. The whole idea of that is that you need to have some cushion, some effect, some room, in case, because you can't actually predict 100% in terms of what will happen to the price. When you look at the price now, from all estimates, all the work that we've done, 2010, relatively, if we do not have unusual shocks, we believe that the benchmark, the market price for oil shouldn't be anything less than 65.
Okay, the budget has been described variously by different people in different ways until it becomes an act. It is just the statement of intention, the revenue profile and the expenditure profile. So in the 2010 budget, you have for recurrent expenditure a little over 2 trillion naira, and for capital expenditure 1.37 trillion naira. And that presupposes that we're not expecting to see very much new development, doesn't it?
That's interesting, because I thought it's the other way around. It actually means this is the first time we are actually blowing up the capital expenditure of the country by 31% compared to what we had last year. What that meant is that
but in comparison to the recurrent expenditure,
let's leave the comparison with recurrent expenditure. Right. We are talking about development. Now, what we are seeing is that let's assume that we implemented all the capital projects in 2009, or we are saying in 2010. We are expecting that we are going to implement all that kind of project plus 30% in addition.
But
that's what we are saying.
That doesn't show in the budget.
No, that's what it shows. Okay. Because in terms of the amount, the amount that you have in terms of capital expenditure is 31% above what we had last year. So if all the money is utilized and the projects are delivered, we are saying 2010. In fact, let me tell you that the whole essence, that's why we call it a stimulus budget. The whole essence of the budget, the philosophy behind it.
We weren't privileged to hear that since Mr. President didn't deliver it to the to the joint sitting of the two houses.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Christian, the stimulus budget.
Yes. It's stimulus. It's fiscal stimulus. We are actually using the fiscal position to re-energize the economy. The philosophy behind that is by saying that we want to massively spend, but wisely. We want to massively.
Can you do the same at the same time? Can you do both at the same time?
That's where wisdom comes in. That's where pragmatism comes in. You surely can. You want to spend very massively, but you want to spend wisely. That's why we have only very 5 critical areas that we're focusing on. Works, which is road. Every Nigerian complains about roads. Yeah, critical infrastructure. What you call critical infrastructure? We are focusing on roads. We are focusing on transport. That's why we are spending so much money on railway and also on the waterways, the marine transport. We are focusing on aviation. All this is about transportation. But bottom line, whether it's road or aviation or marine, it's on transportation. And you know the impact of that on the economic transformation. It's wonderful. Okay. So if we can do all that, that will have a very serious impact on the economy. Now, food security on agriculture.
Yes.
I don't need to talk about power. I mean, just working there, I knew that I don't need to talk about power. Power is gulping substantial amount of money, even in this project, about 12.4% of the total capital expenditure. Works is about 17.9% of the total capital expenditure. So that, which is just for roads alone, that tells you the amount of money that we are pumping into this area. Transport is about 11.5%. FCT, because of the fact that FCT is a window for the country as a whole, a lot of development is also taking place in FCT. Therefore, FCT is dropping about 10.1% of the budget, and Agric is about 9.5%. So, apart from also security,
FCT is gulping more money than Agric.
If you want to say that, if you want to look at it like that, don't forget that also last year we put a lot of money in agriculture in terms of because of food security. Agric is an area that we believe that we can transform this economy. Over 40% of GDP comes from agriculture. And this is an area that the total acreage that we have, arable land in Nigeria, we're actually utilizing less than 50% of it in Nigeria as of today. And in terms of irrigable land, we are utilizing far, far, far below that. So, I mean, a lot of work needs to be done in agriculture where you have only peasant farmers that are producing 90% of everything that we get. And these peasant farmers, what do they have? They have an hectare of about 2 hectares. So we are looking for a way by which you commercialize it, you make it into a real business, a profitable, viable business. So there is, I mean, a lot of things are going into it.
Mr. Minister, sir, it's all very well to sit before the television cameras and say all of this and say that the budget has performed this percentage and these are the things that you do. But you've also admitted that human capacity is a challenge. So when all these words have been said and all these figures written on paper, how do you ensure that there's a realistic translation into, as you put it, deliverables that can measurably improve the lives of the people?
Thank you. The bottom line of any economic transformation is the welfare of the people. Bottom line. And some of the areas that we have been focusing on, because budget is a very powerful tool to ensure that particular transformation. One of the things that the president brought into 2009 was to actually set up the presidential committee that will focus on the budget in terms of the releases, in terms of measuring even the performance, in terms of, because the whole idea is not to say that we've allocated amount of money for this project. And at the end of the day, there's one reason either the money is not released or even the money is released, at the end of the year it's returned back to Treasury. We are not interested in the money being returned back to Treasury. That's not the deliverable. That's not what Nigerians want to say. So we have a presidential committee that meets day and night to ensure that where we have capacity issues, we try to assist them. Where we believe that is public procurement issues, we try to, even as we speak, the National Assembly is actually getting back to us in terms of some adjustments, some amendment they're making on the Procurement Act. So we are actually tackling some of the challenges that we've seen that have mitigated against substantial performance and achievement in the budget execution. I mean, so
So as it stands, sir, isn't the Procurement Act a little cumbersome? Instead of accelerating what it was put there to do, it seems like it's a stumbling block. Am I correct in my observation?
Partially. It's not supposed to accelerate. It's supposed to make sure that there's value for money. It's supposed to make sure that people do the right thing. It is in line with global best practices.
But at the same time, if it becomes tedious, then it's counterproductive.
People may deliberately make it tedious or appear tedious. There's nothing wrong in saying that if you want to do a project, advertise, and let's make sure that it is fairly presented, it is open, it is transparent. Advertise and let people come and bid for it. And you do that. You can do it. We've looked at it. The major challenge I think we have in the Procurement Act is the fact that when people look at the timelines for some of the processes, they believe that if they do not plan it very actively, very effectively, they may have 6 to 9 months still struggling with procurement issues. That's the real challenge. So it's for a manager of resources, you need to sit down and decide that these are the projects. Let me tell you a very simple solution to this, which we have, is that at the beginning of the year, you are the manager, you are the minister in charge. Give us an action plan, a paper. I'm giving you 100 billion. How do you want to spend this 100 billion in the next 9 months? And you sign on that paper. And you give us that paper and you tell us that the first 3 months, this is how much money you are going to release. These are the projects. And how do you want to make sure that you follow, because we work within the rule of law. How do you want to ensure that you follow the Procurement Act? This and this and these are the things I'm going to do. And they're holding you responsible and accountable.
Yes, so coming from the private sector, that's the way it works there. But you know that the civil service and the bureaucracy is not sufficiently fine-tuned, even though there are reforms, to respond in the manner that you have just described. Yes, you can sign the paper, but at the end of the day, as you said earlier on, money is still keep being returned to the Treasury. So where do we place the harmony? Where's the balance?
Yeah, I know that we have some challenges here and there, but one thing that baffles me when we try to just generalize is the fact that we have some ministries that have done relatively well in terms of utilization of their funds and execution of their project. Are they not the same civil servants that are there? They are. So it's really difficult for us to say, oh, it's because of civil servants, or it's because it's a matter of how good a manager are you as the person that is in charge of the resources. So that's why the whole idea is to hold the person that is responsible. If you are the minister in charge of power, Larry sits down and says, look, this is the amount of money. He puts a lot of energy, a lot of work into what he's doing. This amount of money, this I'm going to spend it. If he's had some problem with some civil servant, then he will know what to do to make sure that they do not constitute cobwebs for his progress. But we're actually holding the people responsible, and we believe that at the end of the day, we will actually see tangible results. How do you measure tangible results? In terms of enhanced employment for our people. Because that's the only way you can say, yes, you can see, because people keep on talking about the economy and they keep on asking the question. In terms of price stability, we do not want to have a yo-yo kind of inflation that things are just going up. In terms of the sustainable economic growth, high and sustainable economic growth, that's the only way. It's not just a matter of saying GDP is 10% or it's 12%, but you will know where you were at the beginning of the year in terms of economic power. And at the end of the year, where you'll be. If all the money that we're focusing on agriculture and the policy, the strategy, if it works well, and then you see that you have food supply, you have food availability in surplus. What that means is that the prices will go down, and therefore more money will be in your pocket. That's the way it works. So you will actually.
That's the way it should work.
I agree. That's the way it should work. But there's no reason why it shouldn't work like that. I mean, there's formula for success. It's just for you to follow the tenets. It's not as difficult as people do think. Everything that you do is a matter of a choice. You decide that you want to accomplish this, and you work towards the paths, and you get the results.
No, sir, but I'm sure that in your business school class, maybe there were about 25, 30 of you. Only one has ended up being Minister of Finance. So you might do everything correctly. You might plan for success. But there are also elements that we can't control. But that's a matter for another day.
It's because you are measuring sources
yes.
as being a minister for finance as if that is sources. Not necessarily. The other guys
yes.
that are running their shops or running their own things,
yes.
they are also equally successful in whatever they are doing. It depends on your objective. Success is not measured by what people look at from outside. It depends on you, because you are the one that set the objective. If you set the objective and say, this is what I want to accomplish, and you have done better than that. You are extremely successful. And the other guy
in your
has,
own eyes.
in your own, yes.
But you
forget
know,
about what people are saying. It
no,
is
but,
you.
but it's also important because you live in a society. It's also important to appreciate how others look at you.
Yeah,
the
sure,
perception, the public perception is also very important.
That's the real problem for Nigeria, for instance. The real reason why people talk much about our economy is because of the potentials that Nigerian economy has.
Yes.
I mean, growing at 6% GDP at this current time since 2003. I mean, most of the European economies or the American economies is sweet air into their ears. They just could not believe it that, oh, you can grow at that. But when you look at the potentials of an economy that you still have so many things that are not done, at this point in time, we need to have double-digit growth. You need to grow like 12, 13, 14%.